Hey there. Have you ever really, truly thought about what a scab is? I mean, it's easy to just see it as a temporary patch, right? But it's actually the final scene of this incredible microscopic drama, a life-saving process your body performs flawlessly thousands of times. So today, we're going to dive into the amazing story of how your body stops itself from bleeding.
Think about something as simple as a paper cut. Seems so minor, doesn't it? A tiny little slice, maybe a single drop of blood, and then it's over. But in those few moments, your body launches an emergency response that is so complex and so perfectly coordinated, it's honestly mind-blowing. So, what is actually going on in there?
Okay, so the very second that paper slices your skin, this silent alarm goes off throughout your entire circulatory system. The whole process of stopping the bleed, it's called hemostasis, kicks off immediately. And it's not just one thing, it's a super fast sequence of events, starting with the blood vessel itself taking action.
So the very first thing that happens is the injured blood vessel instinctively goes into lockdown mode. This is called vasoconstriction. Just picture the muscle and the vessel wall clamping down, physically making the pipe narrower to slow down the leak. It's a brilliant first defense, you know? It buys just enough time for the real repair crew to get mobilized.
With that initial leak slowed down, it's time to send in the first responders. And in this whole story, that role is played by these tiny, unsung heroes floating around in your blood called platelets. They are the emergency patching crew, and believe me, they get to the scene in seconds.
Now here's what's so cool about platelets. They aren't even complete cells. They're just these little fragments, but they are perfectly, and I mean perfectly, designed for one job: plugging holes. They are constantly patrolling your blood vessels, just waiting for the signal that there's a breach in the wall.
And the way they work is just a masterclass in teamwork. First up is adhesion. They immediately stick to the damaged, exposed parts of the vessel wall using this kind of molecular superglue. Then, step 2, activation. Once they're stuck, they completely transform. They literally grow these little arms and start shooting out chemical signals. It's like a flare gun calling for backup. And that leads to step 3, aggregation. Those signals attract more and more platelets, which all rush to the site and link up to form a temporary but pretty effective plug.
Now, that platelet plug is great for a small leak, like our paper cut. But for anything more serious, it's just not strong enough. You can think of it like a temporary sandbag wall trying to hold back a flood. To really seal the breach for good, the body needs to bring in the heavy-duty construction material.
And that material is a protein called fibrin. Fibrin is basically the body's rebar. It's this incredibly tough protein that forms a strong, flexible mesh all over the platelet plug. It traps red blood cells in platelets and creates a solid, stable clot. This is the structure that eventually becomes the scab you see on your skin.
But here's the catch, right? Fibrin is so powerful, you can't just have it floating around freely in your blood all the time. If you did, you'd clot up from the inside out. So your body uses this incredibly precise chain reaction to create it only when and where it's needed. We call this the clotting cascade, and it's so important that a problem in any one of these steps is what causes conditions like hemophilia.
This whole cascade can get kicked off in two different ways. The intrinsic pathway gets triggered by damage inside the blood vessel itself. And the extrinsic pathway, that gets triggered by trauma to the tissues outside the blood vessel. Now, the details are super complex. We're talking a dozen different clotting factors. But all you need to know is that both of these paths are designed to merge and head toward one single critical goal.
And that goal is to activate a molecule called thrombin. If the platelets are the first responders, thrombin is the construction foreman. It's the master enzyme that takes charge of the final, most crucial step: building that super strong fibrin net. So here's what thrombin does. It finds another protein that's always floating in your blood called fibrinogen. Now, fibrinogen is soluble, meaning it dissolves easily, kind of like sugar in water. Thrombin acts like a chemical scissor, and it snips off a tiny piece of the fibrinogen. That one little snip instantly transforms it into that tough, insoluble fibrin, which doesn't dissolve and instead starts linking together to form that powerful mesh.
Okay, so we've built this incredibly powerful, life-saving clot. Awesome. But this system is so potent that it brings up a new, really critical question. What stops the clot from just, continuing to grow until it blocks the entire blood vessel? Our body obviously needs some kind of braking system.
And this right here is the central theme of how our blood works. It exists in this constant, delicate balancing act. On one side, you've got all these pro-clotting forces ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. And on the other side, You have this whole sophisticated team of anti-clotting forces, and their entire job is to keep that powerful system in check.
This anti-clotting team has a few star players. There's antithrombin, which, just like its name suggests, directly blocks our formin, thrombin. Then you have protein CNS, which work together to shut down other key parts of the cascade. And get this, even the healthy, smooth lining of your blood vessels is constantly releasing chemicals that tell platelets, hey, everything's cool here, no need to get all sticky.
But the body's cleanup job doesn't even stop there. I mean, what about after the wound is healed? You can't just leave that fibrin clot blocking the vessel forever. You need a demolition crew. And that process has a name. It's called fibrinolysis. The hero of this demolition crew is an enzyme called plasmin. So once the tissue underneath the clot is all repaired, plasmin gets activated and goes to work. It acts just like a pair of molecular scissors, systematically chopping up that fiber net, dissolving the clot from the inside out, and letting blood flow return completely to normal. How cool is that?
Now, understanding this incredible balance between clotting and clot busting isn't just a fascinating biology lesson. It's the key to how some of our most important modern medicines actually work. Doctors can essentially hack this system to treat patients who are at risk of dangerous blood clots, like what happens in heart attacks or strokes.
And this is where it all comes together. Some drugs, like plain old aspirin, work right at the very beginning by making those platelet first responders less sticky. Others, like warfarin, take a totally different approach. They stop the liver from making some of the essential clotting factors in the first place. And the newest drugs, they're even more precise, directly targeting and blocking key players like thrombin itself. Each one is just a different tool designed to step in at a very specific point in the process we just walked through.
So from a tiny paper cut all the way to major surgery, this constant dance between bleeding and clotting, between building up and breaking down, is happening inside you all the time. It is a system of beautiful and sometimes deadly precision. And that leaves us with one final thought. What happens when this perfect balance tips too far one way or the other? That's when things can get truly dangerous, and it really highlights just how miraculous this everyday process is.